Welcome back to the show. Well, so let's begin the discussion. I have here in the studio former Finance Minister Seth Tekper, and as I indicated, we will be getting on the phone to speak with Courage Boti. He is an economist with Data Bank. We'll see how our search for solution will go. Mr. Tekper, it's good to have you today. Thank you so much for coming.
Yes, you're welcome, and good afternoon to your viewers and to listeners.
Very well. So we've been talking to some Ghanaian traders. Of course, we see the problem. It's big. It's a big problem. We try to break it down. Every one of us seem worried about the declining value of the cedi. Do you feel the same?
I think, yeah. I mean, everybody, feels the impact of a depreciation. Obviously, when you're in office, the impact is twofold.
But when you're in office, I mean, can you compare this to how it was for you back then when you were finance minister to how it feels for you as, let's say an ordinary Ghanaian, for lack of a better expression, right now?
Well, I still take an interest, a keen interest in the economy. I do. You may have seen some of my writing because I also teach, students. So I have not lost much interest in the economy. It's just that, the extent of responsibility as Minister for Finance, together with the governor, of the central bank, who is in charge of monetary and exchange rate, policies. Then maybe the only other person who comes closest, to is the president, who feels, the pulse. It doesn't mean that your other colleagues don't, but you have more or less direct responsibility.
Yeah. So that pressure is off of you. But do you get the sense that as an ordinary citizen, as an ordinary Ghanaian, the feeling or the way you experience the depreciation of the cedi is different from how you experience it when you are the one in charge and supposed to make the decisions to solve the problem?
Well, when it comes to, the general view about the economy, you can't even be insulated from the general view as minister. One, because you have family, you have friends, you have classmates, you have people in policy, you have those who work under you, who across, the whole of society. And so, to the extent that people accost you, they want explanation, they make suggestions, I'm saying that you feel that part as well, because you are part of, society, even when you're in office.
Okay.
Now is the extent of the official responsibility that makes, the difference. But you were an ordinary citizen before coming, and as far as the city is concerned, some of this concern has been felt for quite some time. And I believe that we can discuss some of this.
Okay, so let's look at the cedi's performance over the years. Now, between March 2008 and between March 2018 and when the Bank of Ghana, we understand, put in some $670 million to help the cedi boost itself up against the other trading currencies. We've not really recorded any progress, and I'm sure that you agree with me on that. What do you think is happening?
Well, I think it's a time for sovereign reflection by everybody, because the cedi in particular was a subject of intense discussion and debate during the last elections, and I don't have to go over this. So together with issues like, we will not borrow when we come, to office, together with issues like, we can arrest the cedi, we know the fundamentals, somebody does not. I think it's a time for for sovereign reflection by all of us. And it's good you've gone, back. And I think one of the lessons from going back is also that, there are two, there aren't the same set of issues. Some will be similar, some will be the same, but the issues and the economic situation differs at from one time to the other. And I think comparing the headline is enough. It's a good thing to do.
When you say comparing the headline, you mean which headline?
Which is the rate. For example, how much is pumping at any particular point in time.
$670 million in 2018.
Exactly, the extent to which the city has depreciated.
Between then and now,
or between one administration and another. You know, I mean, such comparisons, those are what I mean by the headline.
Will you be able to break it down for us, these comparisons that you want us to do? And I'm not quite sure where you want to go with the comparison.
No, where I want to go is to say that it is time, you know, to focus on, that is what we attempted to do, on the issues, you know, collectively, and look at solutions. What solutions can be short-term, and what solutions over time, which would increase the supply of, you know, foreign currency, you know, because you see, it's a question of people need the dollars to pay for imports, and that's the demand side. Then there are the cocoa farmers, the miners, and others who are boosting the supply, you know, who are making that money available. So at various points, what is needed to support imports, you know, may be lower than what is available to support that import. I hope you're getting.
But that's a long-term solution, isn't it?
But that is what also happens from day to day.
Okay.
And that is why.
So we keep pushing the solution and saying.
And that's why Bank of Ghana has to be pumping in some money from our reserves. You build reserves. So when the supply of, say, dollars, you know, is not enough, and for that reason, the exchange rate, which is the price, is keeping the prices up. You know, then you go into your reserves and
pump in some money
and put in some money,
which is what the Bank of Ghana did in between 2017 and 2018.
That is what the Bank of Ghana is actually set up to do.
Okay,
it's one of its primary functions.
Okay.
So
would you have done the same thing if you were the finance minister then, 2017, 2018?
Well, in 2013, you know, 2012, 2013. And particularly in 2015, 2016, remember when the price of, you know, crude oil, you know, went down. Yeah. When the Jubilee started bearing FPSO went down, we did not earn that much foreign exchange. Yeah. And so we're engaged in some of these same discussions. Okay. The difference is that we have had, and this is my point, the difference now is that we have had about 200% more supply of foreign exchange into the economy.
Well, if you say we have had 200% more, is it between when and when?
From the end of 2016, 2015, 2016, when we had, you know, those crises. Okay. When the price went down, output went down. The supply of foreign exchange, let me put numbers, into the economy was about 500 million from, say, oil, from crude oil. Today, we are making, you know, something above 1 billion, you know, 1.8 billion. From crude oil? From crude oil alone, to complement cocoa. You know,
what's the figure again, 1 billion?
1.7.
1.7 billion, yes. Okay.
So what one is saying is, you know, what is it, that's what I mean by the period. What is it that is going on, which we may not know, considering that if you are comparing the period back then, or further back as you put it, you know, and now, you know, there is more supply into the economy. So what is it that it's not working? Which is not
That's
working.
A very interesting way you put it. And I'm going to. So first of all, doing economics is quite challenging. So I'm going to try and break it down.
Your ordinary questions are leading to better explanation.
As much as possible. So the point that you make is that between 2015 and 2016. You had pumped in about, we're getting about 500 million. Is this dollars?
Dollars.
500 million. We're getting about $500 million from crude oil.
Yes.
So around that time, there was still some money in there. But between
there was pressure on the city back then. Because the supply was going down.
Was going down, yes. 500 million. But now we are saying we are getting about $1.7 billion from crude oil alone.
Yes.
So you're basically saying that there's much more dollars in the system now.
And the reason is this. Let me add, before. Okay. One, the price which fell, I believe you may have heard, known them.
Before you go on, let me just make this make this clear. So there is, the point you made, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that there is much more dollars in the system now than there was back then when there was pressure on the cedi. But even so, the cedi is suffering much more now than it was back then. Yes. That's the point, basically.
That's the point.
Okay.
And therefore, so, and I'm saying that the reason we have more is that one, crude oil output, for example, has gone up.
Okay.
Crude oil outputs, we were supposed to do about 100,000 barrels per day, topmost 120,000 barrels, per day. Okay. We barely did 70,000 barrels.
When?
Between 2014 and 2016, the average was about 70,000 barrels per day.
So between 2014 and 2015, the average was about 70,000 barrels.
Barrels per day.
Okay.
Today, with the addition of 10 field and Sankofa, fields,
okay,
we are close to doing 200,000 barrels per day, about 189,000 barrels a day. So you can see that even the crude oil supply has gone up, almost threefold.
Okay.
Now the other factor is at that 70,000 barrels per day, back then the price had gone down to about $42.
$42.
Yes.
Okay.
Which meant that we even had to go to Parliament to revise, the budget.
The budget, yeah.
Yeah. Today that price, is hovering around 60 to 63. Okay. So both in terms of output and in terms of, price, we should be earning, or we are earning more. I'm just trying to explain to Ghanaians when I say that there is more supply, say and that's on account of 10 field and Sankofa adding to Jubilee field, and so then the question is, if the supply is higher, then what is it that is, troubling the economy? And I think that views have been expressed, one of which is that, we are living beyond our means.
Okay, so hold on, Mr. Tekper. I like the way this conversation is going, and I hope that my viewers are coming along with me. Let me just also let you know that we do have Courage Boti. Courage Boti is a researcher with Data Bank. Mr. Boti, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon to your listeners.
And I hope that you are having a good Independence Day.
I didn't hear that.
I hope that you're having a good Independence Day.
Oh, well, trying to.
You're trying to. Okay, yeah. So we're asking for solutions, basically. That's what we're having, why we're having this conversation. And I've just been trying to find out from Mr. Tekper why between 2017 and 2018, the $670 million injection hasn't really given us the results that we were all looking forward to. Mr. Tekper's point is that back then, when he was finance minister, if you look at the period of I think 2014, 2015, there was less of, if you like, to put it in a very layman's language, there was less of the dollars in the system. Right now, there's more, but even though there is more, we're still experiencing the weakening of the cedi against the major trading currencies. So the point then, the question which we all need to now talk about is what is happening. If we had lower, there were pressures at the time, but still there were, from what Mr. Tekper is saying, there were still factors that sort of made it justifiable, if for lack of a better expression, made it justifiable for us to experience those pressures. But right now, we shouldn't, under normal circumstances, be experiencing what we are experiencing with the cedi.
Yeah, very well, and a very good afternoon to your listeners and Honorable Tekper. I would wish I were in the studio, probably. Would have loved to meet him, but then no problem. I couldn't make it to the studio. That's fine. But to the substantive issue,
we can also always meet here. I'm available.
He says he's available. You can always meet. In fact, you can always come and meet here another time, because this is an ongoing conversation.
We can meet outside the studios.
No, the studio is fine for me.
I'll look for you.
So let's get to the substantive issue.
That's fine. The point you made is very valid. Yes, there is no argument that supply of FX probably over the last 2 or so years would have increased, and for the simple reason that a major driver of that is oil production, which has grown from the single field of Jubilee that was struggling to catch up to even 100,000 barrels a day, to the addition of 10 and now Sankofa, that together they are doing near 160 or so thousand barrels a day now. Of course, then crude oil prices from the low levels of around 38 or so dollars soared all the way to testing somewhere around $80 a barrel last year, but averagely was doing around $70, $75 a barrel. You see, there is also
did you say crude oil was getting to $80?
Yeah, it's
somewhere last year it tested that level.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Tekper, I think you mentioned $63.
Well, it depends on the average period that he's using.
Okay, so between 60 and $80.
Yeah.
Okay.
But sorry to interrupt. The highest point was about 86.
80. Okay.
That was last year.
Okay.
But that's declined since. Yes.
Okay. Mr. Bosse, carry on.
So of course, I mean, if you look at those dynamics, obviously there's been a lot of injections into the system, and if you look at cocoa also, we've had, I think. After 2016, we've had some growth in productivity. I think in 2017, we did around 900,000 metric tons of cocoa compared to 778 the year before, and then averagely it's around that level now. So there is again, even though price of cocoa is depressed, I mean, the volume has kind of also grown. So if you look at it from those perspectives, yes, there's been increase in inflows into the system FX-wise. But my problem and my understanding of the whole Cedi depreciation issue is more structural now than fundamental. The fundamentals are looking good. For 2 years running, we've run trade surplus from 1.1 billion in 2017 to 1.7 billion in 2018. Those are good. Your current account deficit is kind of declining. That is also obvious. In 2017, we ran an overall balance of payment surplus, which was good. Your reserve position is also quite strong relative to probably the hard times. So ordinarily, and then we've had fiscal performance also that arguably is looking better than probably years before. So on those fronts, if the fiscal outlook is looking good and fiscal management is kind of a bit resilient, monetary policy operations are kind of efficient and are yielding the sustaining this disinflation process, and we've had the external accounts also looking good, ordinarily, you should see currency performing better than it is performing now. But what then is the problem? In my view, and from my analysis, it is more of a structural issue than fundamental now. Now, why am I saying this? Crude oil, yes, volumes have increased and all of that, but let's question ourselves really that what is the percentage of the proceeds from crude oil that belongs to Ghana that actually hits our reserves? Because here, the FX repatriation rules from Bank of Ghana is saying when you sell, when you export, bring back the FX into Ghana. But ultimately, those will be repatriated again. Our carried and participation interest in these oil fields, I think the largest we've seen is around 15%. And I guess that is for the Sankofa also field. Honorable can correct me if I'm wrong. So essentially, what it means is that if it's about X amount of dollars you got from crude oil exportation, just about 15% of that is actually owned by Ghana, and that is what actually hits our reserves. And then the rest is for the foreigners. They would use some internally for, the operations, but they'll repatriate a chunk of it. Cocoa is dominantly Ghana, but let's look at it this way: every year we go to the market, secure a pre-export finance facility, mostly to have around 70% of the projected quantity of cocoa that we anticipate will produce that year. The proceeds thereof goes into an escrow account that is used to service that debt. So in essence, the percentage of cocoa proceeds that really hits our economy, that boosts our reserve, is the 30%. And then probably any overage from the projected output that you have estimated for that year. So, and then with all of this, we have an economy where we are largely import dependent. Lots of foreign services in here. So you are running a trade surplus, yes, but your current account is in deficit. And then all the contracts, all the things that ought to be done, the foreign presence in our economy is much, much large, so that the little savings you're getting from FX is going into payment of these things. So you always have pressure. What is the real cause of these issues now? I have seen from data available on the CSD and other sources that in January alone, offshore holding of domestic debt has reduced by some 760 million cedis.
Well, what does that mean?
What it means is that, of course, our debt is, until recently, Ghana's domestic debt, a chunk of it is held by foreigners. Until recently, that sentiment changed, and we've been issuing a lot of short-term maturities, so foreigners are not patronizing them as much. But the holdings, the bond holdings that offshore guys have in Ghana, they've reduced that amount by some 760 million. Now, sentiments are against emerging markets and Ghana, for that matter. So when they are reducing their holding, the risk off would make them send those monies outside and to put demand pressures on the city. The coupons that are being paid on those bonds would also be repatriated. The case used to be that most of them used to reinvest them. But then now, because of the risk off in our market, a chunk of it is being repatriated. Now, if you remember in 2017, when this current administration came in April, thereabout, they issued the famous Ken bond, the 2 billion bond. Now, coupon payment on that is coming up in April again, and that is quite sizable.
And it's going to be repatriated.
If you remember, it was Templeton, Franklin Templeton, and a few offshore guys that bought a chunk of it. So those pressures around this time, which may be through no fault of ours, maybe not through poor economic management, but structural issues and changes in sentiment towards the emerging market are the reasons we're seeing the kind of demand pressures, coupled with the structural of our economy that is not generating enough effects to match the demand pressures we're seeing on the market or the demand for import. And that is why I feel FX management policies from the central bank should be more targeted. I mean, let me give you an example.
Okay, so hold on for me again there, Mr. Botti. I think now you're going into the solutions, correct?
Yeah,
you're going into the solutions. Okay, so Mr. Tekper here had also was also drawing our attention to some of the problems. So now we know the problem, and I know, and I'm sure a lot of Ghanaians know that we know the problems. I mean, the people who manage the economy, they know the problem. And let me say at this point though that we've been trying to get responses or to get representatives from government to have this conversation. We've not been successful. In fact, we've been trying to reach the minister himself. We have tried his deputies. We have tried the advisors to the vice president, economic advisors to the vice president. In fact, we have tried everybody, including the chairman of the committee in Parliament. We have tried everybody from government side to get them to respond to this. We have not been successful. So we're seeking the solutions right here with what we have, Mr. Tekper and Mr. Botti here. Mr. Tekper, you've heard all of what Mr. Botti has said, and I'm sure that you agree with him 100%.
Well, I mean, he's a professional. He makes... I mean, the
issues that he is...
He's very valid.
Repatriation of the profits by multinationals.
I mean, that is... Yes, and that is, as you said, the period from October, what he said, in short, is some of the issues that are raising get worse,
that's okay.
Yeah, get worse after the cocoa season, which is part of the structural things he was talking about. Right, after the cocoa season, you go into the Xmas high demand season, right, and then you come to the end of the year, and companies have to repatriate their profit and whatever in forex, the foreign. So those are some of the things. And as you said, some of these things are known. But let me just make 2 points. One, it's true. I don't think we need to understand some of the issues beyond what I've just said. Because as I said, yes, it's true that we have 13 to 15% only of the forex that is come. Yeah, that is yes. But 13 to 15% of 70,000 times, he even said 38,000, compared to 13% of, 79,000 barrels per day.
It's still a lot of money.
At a higher price, it's still higher.
It's still a lot of money. But he doesn't disagree.
No, he doesn't disagree. I'm only pointing to the fact that, yes, he has a valid point there, but the situation is not as dire. As it used to be.
May sound if you look at it on a very simplistic.
Exactly. So and he has also said, that there is our balance of payment has improved, which means that comparing imports, and exports. The only area in which I have a difference is, and again, which we need to point out is the fiscal. We have been saying, that the alleged 7 billion Ghana cedis that the NDC was expected to have left, right, was not paid. So if you look at it from 2016 to 2017,
alleged and you say was not paid, I mean, what are we dealing with here? Did the NDC leave that that
no,
debt?
the NDC was making a major change. That is, you know, a major. We can have another discussion. But suffice to say that the NDC was making a major change in the way we calculate arrears, so that we can move, and he would know, we can move from accounting for just arrears on a cash basis to accrual basis.
Okay, so now in order for us not to, shift the conversation.
No, I just want.
Let's stick to this one by saying that. So the point I get here.
No, the point is very important.
There was debt that was supposed
No,
to be
the
paid.
point you made is that there is fiscal stability. The contribution to that, yes, the contribution to that fiscal stability is the fact that you have left a lot of debt, and have come to pay, and therefore it is making the situation stable.
Okay.
And our point is that that debt was not paid between 2016 and 2017. Okay. So it is giving a false impression of the stability. There was an offset that was made. Okay. So the fiscal is not as strong. And if you add the fact that, those are arrears, and it includes some of the money that at the moment we are told a certain bank is factoring, it's paying less and all that. It's all that money that is being brought.
Which certain bank is this?
I wouldn't, there's not official. So that is what the minority has raised concerns about some of this. They didn't, the finance committee, the minority in parliament. But the point I'm making is that the fiscal, from 2016 to 2017, and the impression that, you have paid down, 5 billion of debt within 1 year, which is difficult considering that we took 3 years to pay down the single spine arrears of 3 billion. You cannot pay within, it was only offset. Now the chickens are coming home to roost, as we say. Now it is adding, right? It is adding to, the high demand on governments, free SHS, the number of factories that has to be done, the promises. Yeah. And therefore with GRA, I think we all know it, that GRA is not bringing in as much revenue also. And so we've resorted to borrowing. So I just want to qualify. I agree with almost everything you have said, but I just want to qualify the fact that we as Ghanaians have to look at the fundamental, of the fiscal, right, carefully before we come to the conclusion.
So you're saying that when we talk about fiscal stability, because Mr. Botti had indicated part of the reasons why we should not ordinarily be experiencing the weakening of the cedi right now, and that includes fiscal stability. But you're saying that if we talk about fiscal stability, we should break it down further, because you believe that there was a false impression of stability created by the NPP administration when they took over by saying that a debt of 7 billion had been part of a debt of 7 billion had been cleared, which is 5 billion of that 7 billion had been cleared. That when the government gave that impression that it has paid, it was false impression because the money has not been paid.
Well, you can ask the contractors whether they were paid. The list is available. The list is available in the Auditor General's report.
But you're saying basically that the 7 billion of debt that the NDC had left for
was alleged to have left, because
if you say alleged, Mr. Tekper, it makes it difficult for me to get your point, because if you say it was alleged and you're saying that they saying they have paid without necessarily paying is creating a false impression of stability, then there's a bit of contradiction there.
No, let me explain it.
Help me out
quickly.
Okay.
Let's take a road contract, right? Part of the road contract has been done. Certificate has been brought to Ministry of Finance, right, and not paid. Yeah. That is arrears. Yeah. We acknowledge. Yeah. Now you can also take the value of road contracts awarded, right? It is still a liability to be paid. We didn't used to know that. So we established a database for us to know contracts that are in the offing that will crystallize, so that we can control those were taken as liability that was left, work done and not paid, and added, to the 2 billion, which is the 7 billion. That is what I mean by, So we have disputed. We are saying that We only wanted to be careful. And so...
How much debt did you leave, Mr. Tekper?
Approximately 1.82 billion. Which is an average, yes.
1.82 billion.
Yeah, and that was...
And so the figure of the 7 billion that the government said at the point they took over is not correct?
So the 5 billion that was added to raise the deficit...
You don't know where the 5 billion came from?
No, we know it. That's what I'm saying. It is a compilation of work which is in progress, not completed, to crystallize as a liability.
It's still a debt that you left then?
Yeah, but it has never been used. You can go back to 2000. You know, it's never been factored because the work hasn't been finished. You know, let's not digress. The work has not been, yes.
I'm just trying to understand this bit of it because it became a big part of the conversation.
Exactly. So let me, that's why I'm using a practical example.
Okay.
And so we are saying that the method we have always used to calculate arrears is work finished, the certificate brought to Ministry of Finance, and it's outstanding at the time the budget is being read.
Right.
That is the 2 billion.
Okay.
In addition to this, there will always be work that is ongoing, even whilst you are reading the budget.
Okay.
Provided the contractor is working. There will always be work. We have never had a database for that. So the Ministry of Finance and our administration started to compile so that we know it, so that we are no longer taken by surprise.
Okay.
And we wanted to put that in the gift list,
you
know, which is improving the way we manage the economy. Now that file was made available after handing over, even though we disclosed it, and it was in a budget guideline, it was added, even though that wasn't the method for calculating, to the, you know, 7, and a political point was made that we had left 7 billion.
We can have that conversation because there's a lot
but
of
the fundamental point I'm making
right,
here,
there's a lot of politics in there, so we can leave that out. But let's assume the fiscal stability exists, and based on that, we should not have this problem. Why would we still have this problem after pumping in $670 million between 2017 and 2018? And as we speak, we're talking about 5 Cedis, 57 pesos.
I'm saying that you don't have that fiscal stability. That's the point I'm making. Because you created the impression that you had paid it, you only offset it.
Okay, hopefully this will come. Hopefully this will come up in the solution.
I mean, fine. We are ready for a discussionary day on this.
Okay, so let's look at the solutions, Mr. Tekper. You've indicated to us why we should not be having this problem, but we are having the problem. So
we are.
What is going on? First of all, I'm sure that the fiscal stability issue that you've raised will be one of the reasons why you think we're having this problem, that there isn't enough fiscal stability. We know the problem. Let's look at the solutions. What would you have done if you were in this position, if you were the finance minister now?
Oh no, we faced the situation and we had some solutions also. So
no, I mean, let's talk about right now. Right now we're looking at 5 Cedi 57 pesos. In your time, it never got to that. It never got to 5 Cedi 57 pesos.
No, it didn't. Yes.
Yeah. So right now,
it's a rate of depreciation that yes.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Right now, what can we do about this? The weakening value of the cedi.
I think Mr. mentioned that the issues are structural, and therefore we have to start looking for structural solutions.
Okay.
So let me give one example. There is a need for us to boost exports. Even though we are getting oil, we don't want to be over dependent on oil. You know, because when the crude oil price falls, you would have a difficulty. So one of the structural measures that we put in place was the establishment of the Exim Bank. Okay, we have been talking about boosting non-traditional exports for a long time. Ever since I was an officer in the Ministry of Finance, we always talk about boosting non-traditional exports. Okay. For you to boost exports, you need to promote your commodity. You need to produce, right? But you also need credit, money, loans for those who are doing the exports, right? And that is the role of, every Exim Bank. So we took the EDIF money that was coming in, which was virtually treated like a grant, to be turned into a credit, right? And he mentioned Cocoa Board, for example, borrowing on behalf of cocoa farmers, right? Which has, at least cocoa farmers, even if you don't increase the price, they know they will get their old price. And that is because from 1993, Cocoa Board has established the escrow regime he was talking about. They get the money at very good rates. They are able to pay the farmers. There may be delays, but they are able to pay the farmers to meet their costs. We were trying to put a parallel structure, right, through EXIM for the private sector. So you could bring together exporters, right, who are exporting already, unlike the cocoa farmer who doesn't export.
Okay.
And have the bank lead them.
Okay.
You know, have the bank lead them.
And that was supposed to do what?
No, yeah, that's what I'm coming from. If individual farmers export, they won't be able to get 2 billion to come and pay them. If cocoa board pools,
and export,
right,
they get much more
and
money.
sells, they get more money, they are able to negotiate better. So if one exporter, for example, one exporter exports, he can't stand the markets because he hasn't got.
Yeah.
But if 50, 60 exporters are put together,
come together, led by a
the
government
Exim
agency,
Bank,
for example.
yes, that's the Exim Bank, which then, you know, has a correspondent bank say outside, right? Then collectively, like Cocoa Board is able to do through
They have
the
a
bank,
stronger
they have a
negotiation,
stronger, and then we
position.
can, we can establish a parallel,
Okay.
and that is the essence of the Exim Bank, for example, that way. And the reason we started to do this is that there is no emerging economy that emerged. When you say emerging, it means that you are leaving we are emerging too. You are leaving the developing country status to a middle income country status and to an advanced country status. None that has established without an Exim Bank. So, and these are the banks that are giving us loans.
So Mr. Tekper,
Yes.
The solution for you, one of the solutions
I'm giving one
is to
an example.
is to have this Exim Bank facility lead exporters because it will boost exports.
Just as it is boosting the opportunity for cocoa.
Okay, and
over so many
this
years.
is a point I believe where we will need government to ask what is happening with the Exim Bank, because from what you're explaining, it's obviously not working the way.
Well, yeah, not to the credit of government, they didn't dismantle the Exim Bank structure.
But
They've appointed
it's not
officials
operating
and whatever.
in the way that it was meant to
So
operate.
I'm saying that, well, yeah, I'm yet to read their report, which they will issue. But we are talking about solutions.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm bringing, he spoke about structural.
Yeah.
And I'm giving this as example as one.
Of dealing with the structural problems.
Of the solution to the structural problems that we have.
Yeah.
You know, the other one, and then maybe he can come in, you know, because I don't want to take the whole of the space.
Of course.
Yes,
We'll get him to
you know, the other one, he spoke about the retention.
Yeah.
We need to examine the structure of retention. It's good to attract foreign exchange into the economy. It's foreign investors, and it's good to allow them, you know, to retain. But what's the essence of the retention, right? And I know Bank of Ghana is working on it. I don't want to create the impression that nothing is being done. You know, they've been doing some work, but we are saying these are the structural, you know, issues. So, what is it that the retention is meant to do? You are not being given the retention to trade, you know, in a foreign currency, as sometimes happens. So again, you know, regulation. You know, regulating the retention, regulating properly so that it can be used for the purpose, because it's a constant flow. And so if you are going to find long-term solutions, and we believe that we must attract foreign investors now and into the future, into the long term to invest, then we must also make sure that, you know, they are playing, you know, fair and not, you know, trading in the currency and whatever. If you want to trade, come and register a trading company. Then the other last solution is we would always have forex, you know, bureaus and the rest, you know. And the point is, how do we, you know, because part of the solutions, part of the problem you would always hear is people coming to buy our dollars and taking it out and all that. That requires, and again, I know from, you know, our time till now, something is being done to move them to an electronic platform to enhance the monitoring, you know, and to say, show why you need, maybe put some control. It doesn't mean that you are stopping the thing, but you are. So these are some of the structural, these are some of the, you know, the structural problems that we example and some of the solutions that, you know, yes.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Mr. Tekper, on this. Mr. Courage, let me come back to you for, Mr. Tekper made the point about examining the structure of retention. This is a point that you agree with or not?
Oh, no, I agree perfectly with that. I think everything he said about the solutions, they are in place. The Exim thing he talked about, I think, you know, most of the loans, like you said, most of the loans we get for development finance, they mostly are coming from either the Chinese Exim Bank, Indian Exim Bank, and stuff like
Turkey
that.
Exim, Korea Exim.
We need that to expand our local, industrial, and export base, so that they are doing those, and that is why when they give you the loans, they add terms to it, conditions to it. You import their services. That is why Sino Hydro will want to give you, or Chinese government will want to give you $2 billion, but then ask Sino Hydro to come and execute the contract.
Yeah.
They are looking at ways to expand their economy through those means, and those are ways we can also boost our export capacity. So it's a fantastic point, and like you said, Exim Bank hasn't collapsed. I think it's still functioning.
It's still functioning, but how it's functioning and whether or not it helps us solve this problem.
Well, it's still a young bank. It's still young. I know it is playing an instrumental role in the one district, one factory policy, financing a few of them. All of those are ways you could build local capacity. Fantastic. The point I would like to touch on, and I think he tried outward.
Mr. Tekper says it's an Exim Bank. It should look outward. So it's not just about supporting.
You can have the linkage. You can have the linkage to domestic, but you don't take an Exim which is supposed to look outward. So if you want to boost industry domestically, the appropriate institution is the National Investment Bank. The other appropriate institution for government infrastructure is the Government Infrastructure Investment Fund that we put in place. That would leverage borrowing for, so it's just a little point of departure, between us. But I agree with what, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Please go ahead, Courage.
I mean, the point I want to make about them, I have one problem about the way FX is traded, or the management of FX trading in our country. The things I read about South Africa, the things I know about them and other regimes, it shouldn't be very easy for someone to walk into a forex bureau or just by the roadside and say, I'm buying FX.
Yeah.
There should be proper registration. What you're using the money for, it should be traceable. It should be identified. In fact, the strictness of the process shouldn't even make you want to go demand for frivolous stuff. And the main reason why Bank of Ghana this year is actually holding back on how much intervention they are doing into the system, because they don't want to fund frivolous demand. They want to fund effective demand. Now, when you are injecting effects into the system, how sure are you that it is going into the right sectors, the right places, the people who actually need it, and not speculators who are just front-loading demand and capitalizing on the situation already? Now, the FX management system, the trading system in our country is not, I think it's not the best. I think there are lots of loopholes, a lot of things that, let money flow out to the wrong hands, to speculators, to people dealing with, using it for all the wrong reasons. And that is an area that I think we must pay attention to. But while we address these structural issues, now I was about making a point when you stopped me for him to come in.
Sorry about that.
Now, we look at it this way. Beyond the Euro area, the European Union, the single market, which is kind of our biggest source of imports, China as a single country is kind of our biggest supplier of imports. Then from that, you can go to the US and all those other places. Now, Chinese interest in Ghana is massive also. Last year, Nigeria did something. They signed a bilateral FX agreement with China that made available $2.5 billion. Now, what that means is that if Chinese people are coming to Nigeria to come and say do business or import or do whatever it is from them, they do not need to go demand dollars. That facility makes available naira for them to buy. Whereas when Nigeria is also going to China to say import or do those stuff, the facility makes available for them the renminbi for them to use. So that a lot of the demand for dollars in our market is derived. It is not because we are going to trade in it, but because it's a universal currency. But if we have access to trading or exchanging the currency directly from source, it will take away a lot of the demand pressures we see on the dollar from internally, because people need to get. So when someone is going to China, he needs to get dollars in his pocket. He gets to China, then change it into renminbi and then use it to trade and come back. But they could actually get the renminbi by, those bilateral arrangements that the type of which Nigeria did last year. Nigeria, I think also last year, did something with the UK government where their currency was actually included in one of the currencies recognized for trade between the two countries. What that does is it reduces the level of demand, which may not be direct on dollar for your trade financing and all of that.
So are you suggesting? Sorry, just so I'm following. Are you suggesting that Ghana could do what Nigeria did, like
we could do something similar, and it's
pushing
Chinese
for our currency.
Ghana is massive.
Pushing for our currency to be recognized as a trading.
No, but that may even be a long way to go.
Okay.
Trying to get it recognized. I mean, on the international trade front and all of that. Like
Take us another
Nigeria
60 years.
China. But if you could sign the type of bilateral agreement that Nigeria did with China, that made available a certain amount of dollars within a certain period that you can exchange amongst yourself. So when Nigerians are going to China, they get access to renminbi. When they are Chinese are coming to Nigeria, they get access to your naira, and you don't have to pass it through the dollar medium or go to the market, open market, to demand dollar or the otherwise to do your trade. If we could go into, because Chinese interest is so heavy in Ghana, we could pursue that route and then see how in the interim we can reduce the level of demand for which is derived on the dollar internally as we implement the structural solutions, because there is no quick fix to these things.
There isn't.
There's Exim Bank for it to get on its feet and then be able to do what it ought to do sustainably. It will take time.
It will take some time. But we're looking at how to bring the 5 Cedi 57 pesos down. So obviously,
exactly. But in the interim, I think we can explore some of these options and then see how we can help reduce demand on the dollar.
Okay.
And that is one sure way of kind of stabilizing the cedi. I know this conversation will die soon. Ghana is
it won't die soon because we've got 5 Cedi 57 pesos.
Ghana is preparing to go to the Eurobond market. Maybe likely by end of this month, they should be announcing a deal. They are looking to raise up to 3 billion. Once that inflow comes in and hits the account, we'll see currency stability return, and probably this conversation will die, and then everybody goes to sleep again. But
it will die when we get back to a point where people's businesses are not suffering.
Exactly.
Because of the value.
Once they die, the people will be looking forward to the next cocoa facility, the pre-export finance facility, and then all of that. That's how we manage the currency over the years.
Mr. Tekper had a quick intervention to the point about the currency recognition bit. I mean, I'm having a little bit of difficulty wrapping my head around it. But Mr. Tekper, you wanted to make a quick intervention.
The point I want to make is that he's right. Ghana actually has taken the initiative. The Bank of Ghana has recognized the renminbi, which is a Chinese currency, as a trading currency. Okay. So there's a significant first step that has been made.
This was done when?
I believe.
Was it your time?
Yes.
It was during your time.
Yes, and I don't think that this is, and even.
So how does that work?
Even that currency, the renminbi has become a currency recognized by the IMF. For purposes of his reserves.
Yes. So how does this arrangement that Ghana is?
So the arrangement, what he's talking about, I just wanted to add, not to differ with him.
Because I was having a little bit of a.
If you have a businessman who wants to go to China today, and most of our businessmen go to China to import, because he cannot go to a bank and buy renminbi
in Ghana.
I know that Stanbic and a few have renminbi windows. Okay. I know that some of the banks have. Fidelity, I know they do have. But it's easier to get dollars to do your Chinese trade. What that means is that you are buying dollars, taking dollars to China, and exchanging dollars into renminbi. Yeah. Because they have controls. Yeah. Like what he was talking about. And that will
affect the value.
It keeps affecting, So if China can make the renminbi available through a bilateral agreement, I think that's why.
So a businessman in Ghana will just go to the bank and get Chinese currency and go to China.
But I'm saying to encourage again that the Exim Bank can take small steps. How about the Exim Bank working with and we started discussion with China Exim actually on this particular issue when we established the Exim Bank. It's just that it hadn't come into operation. So we can do Exim to Exim. Okay. So that, we can do Exim to Exim. And these are the small steps that the Exim Bank, can be taken. And I actually led a discussion with Exim Bank. First, we wanted them to help us establish the Exim Bank. Korea Exim agreed, Italy agreed, and others, to do, so that you can then, because there are Ghanaians, they don't just go to China to import into Ghana. There are Ghanaians who take goods to China. So you can then be part of the financing of their business sure. In China.
Okay.
So the point is making a very valid and important.
Okay.
But I'm saying that steps had been taken in this direction.
And it would have been really good if we had the government representatives for them to tell us what it is that is happening at the moment to work on this 5 Cedi 57 pesos. I'm going to take what will be our last round of this bit of the conversation. But and I just want to find out from you, there's also been concerns raised about black market. How can we work around this black market problem as we look at dealing with a bigger problem? Mr. Toby, Mr. Aboti.
Well, this is my personal view. Yes, black market, yes, but then I don't think black market is the cause of our currency problems.
They don't contribute at all?
The volume of transaction, if your black market definition is the malam sitting by the road and all of that, they don't really constitute a significant percent of our FX, transactions and stuff like that. So they are not really the cause of the problem. But the thing is, those lapses actually move also into the established system, as in the Forex Bureau system and all of that. The lapses we see there, most of those people sitting by the road are funded by the licensed FX operators who actually find a way of giving them money to sit by the road and do the things they do, and then in a way driving up rates to their advantage, because you could get better rates along the road than when you are in the bureau. But I sincerely, Honorable can correct me if I'm wrong, and probably he has access to the data, but I don't think those sitting by the road really influence the level of depreciation we significantly. That is the emphasis. I don't think they influence it significantly. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Tekwe.
I do agree with him. The issue is, once the currency becomes scarce and is depreciating, that is when their business flourish.
Because they can actually give you very high rates.
Because that's when their business flourish. Yeah. But I must say that we have also made some progress. I was witness to the liberalization of the foreign exchange market as an officer, a junior officer. It used to be the Forex Bureau, when it was established, it used to be the black market dominated. And so we liberalized and we made the Forex Bureaus official. That's why in my contribution I made what we need is an enhancement of the work done by the Forex Bureaus. And when that is
monitoring of their work.
Exactly. And when that is done, they will take care of there will always be black market, but it depends on giving them the opportunities to become big. And let me draw an analogy. If you have petrol prices and other things since 2015, when we liberalized and made it and managed it well, you don't have petrol queues. You don't have people coming by and saying, "Oh, I have 1 gallon."
Well, that's a different conversation we can go in.
Yeah, but I'm saying that. No, I'm saying that when you liberalize, when you make things open. I'm using when you make things
because
open,
if you use a fuel analogy, people can debate you on that as well as to whether or not it has improved a lot as consumers.
Well, we need to continue with the reforms. That's another point.
Okay.
But if I may just, I don't know if we are.
I mean, so from what I get from you too, black market is not a significant part of the problem here. So we should channel our efforts rather into the others that you've indicated if we will need to deal with this problem of the weekend.
Because when you channel your effort into an open, way of doing things, you leave less opportunity for people to do the underground,
Okay. But there was a point also that was made that both of you agreed on about the repatriation of profits, and I'm sure you probably have explained it a little bit in parts of the explanation, and also how we can get investors to reinvest. You said, Mr. Aboti, that the idea was that investors will reinvest the coupon rate, they reinvest it in the country. That's not automatic, is it? Then if it's not, how can we get investors to do this?
You see, no one determines for a fund manager or an institutional investor from anywhere to say, okay, keep your interest or stuff. They are investing for interest. Interest is actually their income from the investment, and then when it matures, they get the principal as well. And often we issue bullet bonds and then pay down the whole thing at maturity. So the interest is the income, it's the cash flow to the fund manager. If, say, you are managing a mutual fund like my organization does, the cash flow that comes to you as the interest you earn. But you see, if you face a reinvestment risk, and by that I mean that you invest today at say 19%, and because of the maybe prudent economic management, growth, resilient growth, and all of that, there is a high risk that, or you as a fund manager face the risk that interest rates might go down in that regime soon or in some future time to come. I think it is prudent for you to reinvest the interest you are earning now to lock down higher rates, so that in the future, when rates fall, you could still be enjoying the high coupon you locked down.
So we as a country cannot get investors to reinvest necessarily?
Oh, no, of course. It's their decision where they put their money. So it is when the economy is looking good, the outlook is good. Maybe the yield curve is kind of correct and pointing down, or it's kind of trimming down, that investors will take that kind of decision.
Okay.
But if now they feel that the risk outweighs the benefit they stand to gain, and the thing is that, yes, policy rate normalization in the U.S. or rate of monetary normalization in the U.S. may have slowed down a bit. Global growth outlook may have kind of tapered down a bit. So logically, you don't expect them to be very optimistic about that.
But how about repatriation of the profits that multinationals make? I mean, is there something that Ghana can do that we're not doing at the moment? And Mr. Tekper, I'll have you answer these as well for me, so do note them for me. And Mr. Bolte, go ahead.
But again, you see, you are operating a free market. You are attracting FDI. The last thing you want to do is say you can't send your money back. Nigeria tried it, and they have to find a way of correcting it. Nigeria had a pegged currency regime. I mean, some time past. I think they tried to liberalize it 2 years ago, and then quickly had to resort to the peg again. And so in that regime, a lot of quantitative controls. Foreigners who invested there do not have that freedom to go to the market, or there is no opportunity for them to freely go to the market and acquire FX and repatriate. FDI investors and all of that same. But if you do that, you're stifling your economy. You are
so that's a slippery ground we don't want to walk on.
Exactly. You don't want to go there. I think in my view, you don't want to go there. You need to just create the environment that makes people comfortable investing. And then if they invest, when your economy looks good and prospects are higher, you don't have to tell them to reinvest their profits. They will look for opportunities for growth and expansion in your economy, and they'll reinvest.
Interesting.
But it is, those are the things we need to do.
I hope it's that simple. I hope it's that simple. I don't know if I do have a lot of time after Mr. Tekper speaks for you to take a final word. But Mr. Tekper, can you address these for me as well? The reinvestment of the coupon rate and then the repatriation of profits.
Well, let me make a basic point. I used to tell my staff that we should not go to the bond market to look for foreign exchange to come and support the cities. We should go to the bond market to get money to come and do investments. For that investments to pay for the loan. Because if you took the view that you are going to the bond market and that's forex, I don't think that's what he meant, but he's saying that is what normally, the view. If you take that view, then you may go for expensive dollar loans, right? And put it into consumption.
But the time, very quickly, I wasn't by any means suggesting that a good.
I know you were not suggesting it. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
No. That's why I wanted to qualify that. That's not what you meant.
Okay.
But I'm saying that as a nation,
I'm running out of time. But Mr. Tekper, do go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm saying as a nation, we shouldn't set that as the objective.
Okay.
We should set the objective of doing bonds, including even the Cedi, bonds. Bonds are for long term. They are for investment. Yeah. And we have to, I just want to make that point.
Okay.
Now, secondly, I think that...
And you wrap up for me on that, the repatriation of profits, how to get some of these profits to stay in this country and how to convince, so to speak, investors to reinvest.
I think we can take the example of the BRIC economies who have done some of these things well. And so if you reorient your economy towards exports, and you have the Exim Bank playing its role, you have the infrastructure fund playing its role in financing, you have the NIBs, the investment-oriented institutions playing their role and supporting business, you would have the situation where you would have foreign investors coming in and taking Ghana as a launching pad to do exports, and I say AGUA. or other, and so they also contribute to the earning of forex. The pressure is when they take forex at the time we don't have enough, forex supply. So it's not to knee-jerk, stop that activity, but to rearrange the economy towards a bit of an outward-looking economy, and that is part of the structural, discussion, which courage. But let me just sound a note of, and I know we do not have this as part of the, but I think very soon we are going to exit the IMF.
Yeah.
And I think this is one example of why some of us have been cautioning that I did a homegrown. And one of the objectives of the homegrown is that we should be able to manage our affairs. So I'm not against, being in control of your destiny. Far from it. We are saying probably, crawl, then you walk. Because ordinarily what we are facing now is the precise moment when the IMF comes and provides foreign exchange. That's how the IMF is established.
Okay, so you have fears that we even though
we may be losing that opportunity.
We're leaving the IMF opportunity, it looks like this is a time where we need the IMF. Is that
I'm saying that this is an example of a time you need the IMF, even if you exit. Don't exit completely. Many countries that exit programs.
So you're saying Ghana should not exit the IMF program completely?
Well, I made a point. I'm giving reasons. Until you are able to have your economy firmly on the ground, like the Asian economies did. They went, some of the Latin American economies and the rest. They nurtured, but they have the IMF in reserve. Okay. And they have the right to go back.
Okay, so the point
and
you're
to
making
say that
here,
when I have an issue that we're having now, let me come to you, let me tell you my program, which I am going to manage, and then you give me money to resolve some of the things. Okay. And I'm bringing up this conversation because I think we are not having a conversation about the implications.
No, we can talk about this. Yes. We can talk about this going forward, Mr. Tekper. We can certainly talk about, and I think it's a very interesting position because the government has told us that we're exiting the program shortly. So as we near the exit of the program, we can bring you back so we can have this conversation.
We may end up like Britain.
Yes. So the point you're making is that at the point where we are, we may be better off staying partially with the IMF.
No, we are in an IMF program still.
Yes, we're ending it soon.
Yeah, we're ending it soon, but I'm not sure that the IMF has fully disbursed, because one of the things that could happen is that when the board takes a decision on the mission that just came, we may have some balance left on the loan,
so which
could then be used. No, which could be used. I don't know what the outcome will be.
I just want to understand that we can still stay on the program for a while, even when it gets to the time when we have to exit.
No, there isn't only just one program. Let me tell you what Kenya does. Kenya has its own program.
We need to wrap up because we've run out of time. So,
yes, okay.
But like I said, we can have this conversation once again.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be clear in my mind that this is what you're saying, that Ghana, when it comes to leaving the IMF, can stagger it for a while.
It's possible.
That's what you would have done. That's what you would advise the president if you were a finance minister.
I've gone public on this on several occasions already. Yes, it's just a question. That's all.
It's a question. Yeah. Okay, I still have a lot that I actually wanted to talk about, but like I said, Mr. Tekper, we can bring you back because there was a very interesting comment that a gentleman sent some time ago about this the currency, and I'm going to try and look for it so I can just share it to end the conversation. He says if you had to pay, his name is Kwejo Benny, he said if you had to pay someone $100,000 a few weeks ago, and you would have paid 450,000 Ghana cedis. He says today you need 542,000 Ghana cedis. That is a loss of 92,000 Ghana cedis. And he says that is how the businesses of a lot of Ghanaians get destroyed. And I'm sure that you agree with this position of this gentleman.
I think that one of the traders expressed a similar sentiment. The one who was importing.
So certainly the reason why we need to keep this conversation going, and certainly the reason why we need to get this money to stabilize. I mean, 5 Cedi 57 pesos, that's a lot. That is indeed a lot. But it's been an interesting conversation, and hopefully we'll have some solutions here. It's sad that we could not get the government responses on this. We've made all the efforts and they've not responded to those efforts that we've made. So we'll bring up this conversation once again. It is necessary. Mr. Tekper, thank you so much for coming. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Seth Tekper is former finance minister there. He's come all the way to the studio to help with this conversation. And I was also joined on the line by Courage Boti. Courage is a researcher. He works with the Data Bank. Courage, thank you so much for your time this afternoon as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And Honorable, I would contact them, get your number, then I'll call you.
We'll bring you both back in the studio to have the conversation, going forward. The other parts of the conversations that we want to have, because there's also a prediction that by 2023, the cedi will be at about 60-39 pesos. And I wanted us to talk about it, but for lack of time. So we'll bring it up again. Don't worry, you come to the studio with Mr. Tekper as we go along.